Good day, everybody, and thank you again for joining our awesome podcast called Splints and Whiskey. Splints and Whiskey is the podcast that works and talks to, we've turned global now. We've got a body of believers, of first responders, military medics, paramedics, firefighters, law enforcement, and then lay people all over that are listening that want to learn about what you guys do and what these superheroes do every day, such as myself. My name is Liz Artz, and today I get to host this exciting episode, but I am not the moderator. I'm going to have the moderator be Jake Wiemann. I almost messed it up from Kansas City, and I'm going to have each of these guys introduce themselves. But this is a paramedic firefighter panel, and I'm super stoked because I've got three tenured guys on here that the audience is just going to love. You've seen two of them before on the podcast if you've watched all of them, and then David Keeler is like just an awesome addition. He's got so much experience, it's crazy. So before I pass it over to our beautiful moderator, my buddy, who is probably rooting for Kansas City. I'm not sure if you've got a bye week this week or not. I don't think you do.
By
Oh, you
week.
do? You got a bye week? Okay, good.
Yeah.
No
So
wonder.
that's
Yeah,
otherwise, yeah, we wouldn't be able to do it right now. Yeah.
that's what I wonder because Kelsey's on my bench. I just realized I had to switch him out for some other tight end. Okay, so yeah, so he's looking for a three-peat at some point, and I'm looking for stairway to seven. So that we have a constant love. We have a you're my second favorite team type relationship. Anyway, so before I pass it over to you, I want to thank our sponsor. Our sponsor is Life Autonomous Care Consultants. Life Autonomous Care Consultants is a it's a company that sells gear and training gear and then trauma gear for the field, all the way from IFACs up into high fidelity mannequins, and even into AR, VR, robotics, anywhere from being literally boots on the ground in the field like these guys are every day, all the way up into the MTFs of the Department of Defense. So we only sell and we work with first responders and Department of Defense, and then occasionally, we'll work with like college and universities, but we're just kind of a trauma company, and that's what we do. The best way to find LACC is really to just look under our body of there, because I've got a triad, Splints and Whiskeys under it. We have a foundation that gives the first responders called the Liz Arts Foundation, and then LACC itself, the company where we can help you buy your gear. We're procurement specialists, whether you're state, local, or federal. We can get you where you need to be. So the best way to find us is www.lacc, or excuse me, www.lizarts.com. That way, when you look under the Liz Arts, you get to see the whole spectrum. And so, anyway, thanks to LACC for sponsoring this. And then, again, I'm Liz. I am thrilled at this point and honored to introduce our three guests. We've got David Keeler from Tidewater EMS. We've got Brian Bardsley from Chicago PD. And we've got Jake Wiemann from Kansas City, and right outside of Kansas City. It's Lee Summit is what it's called, right? But
Correct.
yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. See, I'm getting good. I'm starting to get good with you, bud. So, but he's got several jobs. So I'm gonna have them introduce themselves, but I'm not doing that. I'm passing it over. I'm passing the baton to you, Jake. Thank you for moderating. Thank you for saying yes. And I'd like to thank Kansas City for having a bye week this week, just
Very
so
much
that
so.
we can be here together on a Sunday. All right, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, for having all three of us on. Appreciate it. It's a great opportunity. One way I say it is, or think about it, is after coming home from Afghanistan or being at war, or even with the fire service, public safety, you want to tell your story, but you don't only want to tell your story, you want to be able to tell it to somebody that truly wants to listen to it. And usually, most of the time, you only get about 30 seconds, if that, to tell your story, even when someone asks. So then it's very honored and nice to be able to have this platform to be able to share what the insights and things that we've been through. And then with this, before we get started, we'll give kind of a brief bio. of ourselves so that you kind of know where we're coming from. So when we answer our questions, it kind of has some context with it. We can start with David.
Hey, Heroes. Well, thank you for having me on as the probie for Splints and Whiskey. I'll try to make my first appearance, noteworthy. And actually, so I started out in television, actually. My goal was to work for CNN and the like. And some strange occurrences happened. I live in the city of Virginia Beach, which is the largest city with an all-volunteer rescue system. And so through a series of connections, and you could even say divine interventions, I volunteered with the Virginia Beach and became an EMT and worked my way up through opportunities you couldn't get anywhere else and got my paramedic. And as I wound up needing a job, worked for a fire department in the area. And the result of that was because that fire department combined, they used to just have ALS techs and then a firefighter, they decided to merge the two. So I was one of the first batch hired as that combo platter, if you will. Worked in the fire department and squirted water for a number of years and worked on the floor. And then Virginia Beach wound up hiring a batch of full-time paramedics. And I was in that first batch to be hired and went through every opportunity there. Became Marine medic, worked with helicopter EMS, became field supervisor, and then worked in training. And when you start passing it on to the next generation, it makes you become a better provider yourself. Often I would say I'm becoming a trainer, so I know how to do it myself better. I just need to repeat it over and over again. And Virginia has a system where then if you want to do continuing education units for your recertification, you have to go to an education coordinator that oversees and provides those CEUs. So I became an education coordinator and retired from the city, but didn't stop and started working for an organization, as Liz mentioned, called Tidewater EMS. And it is a council that oversees all the EMS agencies and training for Eastern Virginia. We're actually doubling our expansion area in the near future. And so I'm now serving as the regional education coordinator for Eastern Virginia.
Very nice. Thanks,
went
David.
back. But can't stay away. I went back to Virginia Beach as a volunteer again. So I currently serve as the paramedic in Virginia Beach on a volunteer basis. Because you can't teach it if you don't do it.
Thank you. Yep. All right, next up, Brian.
Good morning, or I guess good afternoon now. So I started my adult life, if you want to call it that, in the Marine Corps. I went to boot camp 2 days before my 18th birthday, and 88 to 94, bounced around for a little bit, missed basically every conflict that we had in that time frame through good luck or bad. I don't know which, but got out, moved to Chicago, and missed being in uniform almost immediately. And I thought I kind of had an interest in being a police officer, and I thought getting some medical background would help me out. So I enlisted rather in the Army Reserve. I got assigned to the 814th MP Company, which was staged out of O'Hare, basically, Rosemont back then, and fell in love with medicine. I mean, really, hook, line, and sinker. Through the Army, I got my EMT basic license, moved to a private ambulance, bounced around for a little while in the privates. In 98, I went to paramedic school at Loyola University, and then went to the fire academy almost immediately after that. We have contract firefighter paramedics here in Illinois, where departments that don't want to hire full-time guys to ride the rig, they'll hire us, and we'll kind of mostly do EMS, a little tiny bit of fire every now and again. I also worked in a suburb called Stone Park, a little tiny hamlet on our west side that I was able to move up the ranks from a firefighter to engineer to a lieutenant for a while. Was enjoying that, and then 2004, the Chicago Fire Department called me. I was a single role paramedic on ambulance 10 on the west side of Chicago. It was the busiest ambulance in the United States, as it is most years. And, after a year running 34 calls a day, I decided I didn't want to play paramedic anymore. So fortuitously, Chicago Police Department called. And so I went over there. I was a very average 15th District West Side police officer. Nothing spectacular, certainly. And then the nation being at war in 2006, I enlisted in the Illinois Guard. I deployed to Iraq as a medic attached to a rifle company in 06, 07 during the surge. Got a Bronze Star, a combat medic badge, and a whole new appreciation for tactical medicine. When I returned to Chicago, they moved me to our training academy, which was awesome. I got to be a utility infielder, taught counterterrorism, taught marksmanship, rifle, pistol, shotgun, recruits, returning officers, everything. Got to teach some tactics, got to teach some medicine, got to do some leadership stuff. It was a great opportunity. And then about 13 years ago, they decided they wanted to revamp how they were doing EMS on the team. They kind of had a failed system in place, and I got moved over there as a team leader, and that's where I've been ever since. I'm a team leader on the WMD team and the team leader for the medical team for the Chicago Police SWAT team, which is kind of where I am right now, and hopefully will be for the next 2.5 months until I retire.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't decide what I wanted to grow up.
Yeah, exactly. But now you know. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jake, I took over for a second, but now you know
No, it's
what
all
you
good.
want to do, and that you want the highest rank of the land, which is called retired. You're on your twilight tour, baby cakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Transferring to Fort Living Room.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Yes. Thanks, Brian. Then myself, I'm Jake Wiemann. My background, I started or grew up on a farm and then played college football. Was very fortunate at University of Central Missouri, which is Division II, to get a full ride. There, I got my nursing degree. Out of there, I worked civilian nursing for 2 years. And then the call from another buddy, we joined the Navy in 99, and we were at Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth. And while I was there, wanted to kind of expand on that. And then a buddy of mine that I played college football was already doing firefighting in the department that he was at, which is Lee Summit Fire Department. They run both the ambulance and the fire service together jointly. And so he thought I'd be a great fix based on my interest. And so then in 2005, I came back and interviewed and luckily got on and been on with the Lee Summit Fire Department since 2005. And with their gone through the ranks of paramedic, engineer, and throughout that, then about 11 years ago, we started up for our town the SWAT medic, the tactical medic. So was one of them, and then became the team leader here about a year ago. And then now starting to roll off because I'm starting to prepare also for that retirement phase. So that is kind of on the fire side. Did that and then continued with the military as a nurse corps officer from active duty, was in the reserves. With that was with always on the medical side with medical units, and then went through the rank staff officers, went through all the staff positions, and then now currently I'm the commanding officer for 300 reservists that augment the active duty for the United States Comfort Hospital ship. So we have about 20 doctors, 50 nurses, and about 200 medics with that, and then done numerous different programs, helped start up our peer support program about 12, 13 years ago at the fire department is one of in the mentor program at the fire department, kind of where I'm at. And so that kind of gives the background in kind of where my mindset is with this. And so then with it, then fortunately Liz has got us together. So then some of the topics we can discuss. And then with this, naturally, I think from the last time that we did this podcast, we start some questions and then kind of wherever they go or take us, I think is just the natural of it and kind of allows us to do that. And then so for myself, the first question that I brought up there, it's been kind of eating at me, was how do you hold the standards within our position? All of us here are mostly all senior. And then kind of with my situation currently now, I'm in a dual firehouse where we have a fire truck, pumper, ambulance, and a fire chief. So we commonly have 9 people. And then now I'm in my early 50s. And then most of the people in my firehouse are in their 20s. And so and I'm not in that role, I'm not in a supervisor role, but one of the senior guys, obviously. And so then holding that standard. And so then I was just going to present that question out to David and Brian first. And then I have my thoughts. How do you hold that standard? And then even then now today or over throughout the years when someone did call you, kind of work through that of how it made you feel, how you reacted, and then how you accepted that.
That's
or
good.
didn't accepted it. Yeah.
That's
So I'll pass
good.
it on. Either
Yeah.
David, you want to go ahead or?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I'm teaching or mentoring others, and I'll use when I went on the floor in the fire department here, I'm a red shirted, probie, rookie, all the things. And these other people in the house were very senior, they've had the way, but I was the only medic. Everyone else was an EMT. So now it's this matter of you got to live by example. I don't have a formal rank. I don't have pips on my collar, but you just have to be the standard, right? And so it's leading by example. Some call it also, servant based leadership,
Yeah.
where you just have to walk forward saying, this is how I choose to be, and this is how, you should be to have the best outcome, because it's really not about you. These standards are in place to save others, right? And I often teach, you can talk about legal and the rights of, groups, but we are entrusted by society to have the right to interfere with how your body processes oxygen. Just by putting a non-rebreather on somebody, you are changing how that body responds to respiration and ventilation. And that is a very sacred trust. Yes, you can blow through red lights, and yes, you can, kick down some doors into people's houses, but at this fundamental level, you need to hold the honor that society gives you by allowing to do things that no one else can do in this profession.
Yeah. It's good. What about you,
Oh,
Brian? Oh,
So
sorry.
I come from a position where I very rarely held significant rank. I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, which is not an unsubstantial rank, but certainly not higher level. Last so in the Army, been a lieutenant at Stone Park, but that was a part-time department. The majority of my life has been as what I am now, a police officer. I'm the lowest ranking person on the Chicago Police Department by title. But at the end of the day, something that's always driven me is that leadership is not what's on your collar. It's not what's on your hat. You can be a leader and be one of the boots in the ground, or you can be a boss that is an absolute disaster in any sort of leadership. So at the end of the day, for me, holding the standards is I've always kept in mind that I don't really work for my bosses. And I'm feeling a little, my oats a little right now. I don't work for the mayor of Chicago. I don't work for the superintendent. I work for the people of the city of Chicago. And I work for my teammates. I work for the people that, and that's how I hold the standard. I've always held it for me, is that people have put an awesome responsibility in me, whether it was my teammates on the team, my platoon in Iraq, the people that I'm responding to their 911 calls. I have a moral imperative to be the best that I can be for them every single time. We don't get a bad day in law enforcement, in the military, in the fire service, anywhere. You live in a world where you bury your mistakes. So for me, the way I always tried to hold the standard is the idea that you do the right thing when nobody's looking. You maintain the idea. You never, my partner Brendan Hartford on the SWAT team always said, you never let your scope of practice limit your scope of knowledge. Knowledge costs nothing in your aid bag. It doesn't weigh anything in your aid bag. You always strive to be the best person that you can be at whatever billet you happen to be at, even if it's not a sexy billet, even if it's not, whatever. And I tell this story every time I talk on one of these things. I think I've done a lot of really cool things in my life. I've been in a lot of very high speed, sexy sort of whatever. And I think some of the best medicine I ever practiced was holding an old lady's hand in the back of the ambulance at 2:00 in the morning on a nursing home bounce because she was scared. I mean, and if that's not the level that you hold yourself to with whoever you're responsible to, then I think you're really missing the point. And I think that was what always held me to the standard. And I would hold other people to that standard as well. If you're one of my medics on the SWAT team, you better be able to do this thing. I'm trusting you with my people when I'm not there, and you better be able to execute that mission flawlessly, blindingly fast every time. And that's what all of my thought process on was that I don't work for bosses. I don't work for whoever. I work for the people below me. I work for the people that trust me, that rely on me, that pick up that phone or pick up that radio and call for help, that I'm going to be there on time, on target, doing the right thing for them. And that's what's always driven me to do it. I'm not I'm not going to say that in situations I haven't been afraid of dying, because I think anybody who tells you they're not afraid in combat is a liar. But I've been more afraid of failure. Like I am more
Yeah.
afraid of failing my guys, of getting back and realizing that somebody didn't get the outcome that they deserved because I didn't do what I swore to do. And that's been again one of the things to me that kind of holds me, and I try to hold people to the same level. It's hard because not everybody shares that, but I picked that up from people who came before me. So that's kind of my take on that.
You had asked on how you react when you're called out for not doing so, and Brian's absolutely right. We're standing in the gap, and our failure isn't just us on a bad eval or a bad. This is affecting, if not the lives, literally of the people that we're helping and treating, or their property, or but it's also how are you called out? And a very positive
Yes.
story was. I, failed to do a setup of a hose during a working fire. Someone had to scramble to do some other things. And they took the time after the call on our own. He took me aside and said, let me talk to you. This is really the better way to do it. Not, look, you messed up, look, loser, look, proby. It was done and it really internalized with me. And I really appreciated that he educated me without blame, but so I don't make that mistake again. And I think that's very valuable of how you call people out if they don't meet that standard.
Yeah,
I agree.
that's so true.
Yeah, I agree with that. In the military side of the house and the law enforcement, especially on the SWAT team, you have after action reports where it's critically important that everybody checks their rank at the door and you check your feelings at the door. And those debriefs are brutal. And if you don't have the thick skin enough to be able to deal with it, although, we're alpha personalities, very much so. But you have to understand that once you leave that, you leave a better person than you were when you got there, ideally. But I agree with you. If you call me out in a bad sort of way, obviously that's going to rub me the wrong way. And I've always tried to praise in public, criticize in private. That's one thing they taught me in the very basic levels of the military. If I get something to say to you and it's negative, I'm not going to pull you in front of everybody, because not only do I not want to damage your confidence, but also the confidence of the people around you. My medic did something bad, and my medics have been phenomenal. But if they did something bad, I'm never going to call them out in front of their teammates that now wonder what their capabilities are. If I feel like you're not getting the job done, then we need to find you another billet. But I will never call you out and damage your reputation, and then maybe even damage your psyche on that. So I've always tried to take it where people give me constructive criticism, and it's happened before. I've screwed things up a lot of times. And when you come to me appropriately, then I'm more than willing to listen to it, because I feel at the end of the day, that's how I get better. If I do a training run and everything goes perfect, I learned nothing. If I go into a training run and I screw a bunch of stuff up, and the proctor runs me back and goes, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, then I'm learning. I don't want to look perfect. I want to learn from the mistakes that I make, ideally in training, but even operationally, again, I can't fix what happened yesterday. I can just make sure that I'm never that guy tomorrow. That's all I can really do with it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What about you, Jake? What's your answer to that question, to your question? Dude, you guys, that is so major. I want to, by the way, just point out, I told you I wasn't going to talk, but I do want to tattoo across my face, praise in public, criticize in private. That's my standard of leadership always. And it's just for a million reasons. So I just can't say thank you enough for that attitude. Oh gosh, it's amazing. All right, Jake, what's your answer to your own killer question?
With that, I'm just sitting here because the one thing that it came up, make a statement that just came up yesterday at the firehouse that relates to this, is that if you, no matter how much experience you have or whatever, you're always learning. And if someone in this type of business acts like they know it all or know it all, run from them, or because they're usually probably hiding some competence. But with that, then back to this is like, I'm learning as we're sitting here, been doing the fire service for 21 years now and 28, and I'm still constantly learning from these two. And so for mine, because I'm dealing with like the new generation and people that are very new in their career, and a lot of times with ours, because we're decently busy, but we're nowhere near where that what Brian was on in that medic there in Chicago. And so then we do
Yeah.
have a lot more downtime sitting around the coffee table, so to speak. And it's not necessarily an incident that come up because then I'm spot on with, the praise in public and then address any issues in private. But then I've gone astray where we're sitting there and then the talk goes in one direction somewhere where you're passionate about it. And then I now can learn that I need to correct myself, even just, and I've learned that recently too from some of my mentors, to, even though it may not, don't allow the conversation to go that way and go into the practices that you don't wholeheartedly feel with that. And then another thing from detaching with this, what I found out with this work is that I'm coming from A-type personality, being on some highly competitive athletic teams, and as such, and always want to win. And so I want to do whatever it takes to win. I want to win, and regardless of helping the lowest guy or the best guy, wherever that is. But then having that mentality can be great and pushes you forward. But then sometimes you lose sight of the big picture for myself. Whereas with the guys now, if I detach, they're all hitting the target well above average.
Yeah.
But it's like, but then my goal is like, I want to obviously know that you can't, there's no such thing as perfection, but you want to fall on excellence. And with that, they're, well, I don't know if they're at the level because they're new and they are what they are because of where they're at in their careers, but they're well above average. But then I think in my own mind, in my right, so it's part of my own issue where I'm trying to push them to be too perfect, and then I'm getting on them. And so for me, it's sometimes looking at the whole situation for myself and making sure that take the practices that you've been taught throughout. And I'm glad of the praise in public and then the corrections in private. And so having this right now has been very grateful for me to kind of get that check your own pulse type of
Affirmation,
aspect.
maybe.
Yeah, affirmation. Yeah.
But I have a question about that, if you don't mind, from a layperson's stand of view, and then from just calling on public servants. Another thing I'd say with you guys, with your seniority, would be also that you have a whole different generation of not even probies anymore. I mean, we have, like I'm 47 years old, and even my guys that are 5 years younger than me have a different attitude of expectation. You can call it entitlement. I would say expectation if they're in a decade from my age. But then I'd say if they came in and they're with you guys now, the youngsters, like what they expect, and then what they kind of like, is there an attitude of entitlement that I think it'd be hard to have that self-control. Now you got your self-control every time you're in the back of the bus with your people the whole time, right? I mean, of course, you're with your people, you're holding Brian's old lady's hand. But when you're sitting around the table and someone's bitching about something that's like so first world, right? And all of you guys have seen this stuff and you had to climb these major ladders to get there. It's a different, like Jake, you get this, but when I go into the field, DOD style, they say it's a different US Navy. Well, is it a different first responder world right now? Just, I mean, because the world is so different, like that attitude of entitlement? Or do you think that, I mean, we all get lucky and blessed that you probably have, if you've got 20 people, maybe only 2 of them are the ones that are annoying that have it. But I mean, have you noticed a difference in
So I'd say
your
yes. So
recruits
for
and
mine
all
would
that?
be yes and no, but then mine is like, if you went back, I'm sure that people that were 20, 30, like when I first came on, they were probably saying similar things about my
Yeah,
generation. And
yeah,
so does
that's
this
true.
kind of just repeat itself? And so then one way when I was diving into this question and thinking about it is then when we go on calls, and whether it's EMS or fire, everybody performs to the best of their ability and they give 110%. I'm like, okay. So then when I was thinking of reframing this to discuss with the guys would be stick kind of focus on that, because then it's like, then I would say, then with that mentality, are we doing that for each other in the firehouse? And then conversely was thinking about that too. Then when we go home, are we giving that same dedication to our family and our friends in our immediate family? Because sometimes like this job can bleed over into negative aspects. Are we serving them the same level that we do on every call that we go on? And so then when I looked at it that way, they are. So then is it just that they respond to things differently? And do we just personally have to figure that out? Because I know, like, when I was a probie, if they told me, I was doing something wrong, I just shut up and listened to them, because that's how we were taught through our generation. So I think now it may not be any better, right, wrong, or different, but then now, like, they're sharing their feelings and how, well, this is making me feel, anxious or upset or whatever. And it's like, and so I think there may be a little bit, and so now when I detach, I don't think there's anything wrong. Then we would sit here, my generation, say that they're entitled, which may be true, but then they're probably saying the same thing about me when I was, in my first 5 years.
Yeah,
So-
I heard this thing that said, I'm sorry, Brian, I'll
But-
be quick. It said something like, the first, I read this quote and it said something like, this generation is the worst generation, the most entitled generation. They think they know everything, blah, blah, blah. And then it was during a workshop, a leadership workshop. And then at the bottom of they pulled down the name, and it was in 532 AD, and it was Socrates or something like that, right? So it's like everybody's the worst recruit class, So anyway, Brian, you go ahead, and I promise I'm going to mute. I love you guys.
No, I totally agree with the idea that, every generation has. I heard that in the Marine Corps. I heard that in the Army. I heard that in the fire service. Oh, listen, it's not the job it was anymore, kid. Oh, you guys all suck and whatever. I think at the end of the day, obviously every generation will have its individual strengths and weaknesses. I think we all do. In my experience, the people that show up on the jobs that I work, they all, at the end of the day, have a desire to do the job and do it well. And if you have that, that's all I need. Like, I may do adjust fire a little bit, like how I teach classes, I will adjust. If I'm dealing with a bunch of high-end SWAT medics, the language I use, and I teach a lot, and how I teach doctors is different than how I teach cops, which is different than how I teach whoever. I have to adjust the way I talk and the intensity levels and things like that, but that's my job. At the end of the day, when you talk about how crappy cops are or whatever are, they are the product of their training. People do not rise to the occasion. They default to their level of training. And if your probies suck, maybe you need to look in the mirror at the end of the day. And that's the hard fact of leadership is, if you don't like what you see, then you have to change it. Now, maybe I can't on the macro level, but on the micro level, I can absolutely do that. And if you have the ability to do this job well, then we can work it out. I'll figure out what it takes to train you. But no matter what you are, I expect excellence. And I'm not looking for excuses. I'm not looking for whatever. No matter how old you are or where you come from or what medals you have on your chest, there's a level of excellence I expect out of you, and I'll accept nothing less. How we get to that level will vary with who I'm talking to in a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, it's on our shoulders. And I think the more senior that we get, again, not so much in my grade because I'm not high ranking at all. And I've never taken a promotional test. I do not want to be a boss. I'm very happy where I'm at. But at the end of the day, the onus of change lies on us. Like, if I don't like what I see, then I have to change the stuff that's around me. And that's all we can do with it. And I think a lot of this stuff about this being the worst generation and they're terrible and they're this and they're entitled and I don't know. And if you're sitting around the table and you're bitching about whatever, that's not my job to correct you. Like, whatever, that's the table. Everybody has a voice, no matter how stupid it is. You can say whatever you want to say. It's not my job to slap you down like, listen, kid, back when I was, but, training, then there's a standard. Like, hey, man, I don't care, who hurt your feelings, but you just killed that patient in training, thank goodness. Let's not do that again. But again, I think you have to be able to detach yourself from your level of expertise and knowledge. I should teach you. I should instruct you. I should mentor you. But what your beliefs are on in politics or what music you listen to or whatever, that's none of my business. Like, you have the right to speak your mind. And somehow people get that confused sometimes. Oh, I'm a boss. I'm a senior guy. So you need to shut up and listen to what I tell you about everything. Nah, man, like there's a job and we got to do it right. There's industry standards, there's levels of care that we have to perform at. But once you step out of that role, then you're just the same. You put your pants on the same way I do in the morning. I got no business to be lecturing you or telling you what's right and what's wrong on stuff. There's a time and a place for that sort of thing. But by and large, I think you need to make sure you don't mistake your rank for being a better person than other people are. Maybe I'm a better practitioner than you are. Maybe I'm whatever, but I'm not better than you. And I think that's something important for us to keep in mind.
We can also provide a lot of context, and someone might say, "Oh, this thing is no good," or "This thing is good," and in a position of being, a senior member or an educator, or I'm in a department. I've been in a number of departments where there's big transitions, and I can say there's a reason why it's this way and not that way, right? And I remember early on, I had an officer is like, "All right, I'm gonna show you the worst job you're gonna have to do in this whole thing," and it's a paperwork thing. And guess what? It became the worst job that I did in my duty. Like, thanks for setting that context. And how many times we see leaders going, "Yeah, that you're right, that is no good, and our stupid chief this or our stupid officer that." And like, well, now who's? And I find, we don't need to poison that well for the next generation coming in. And so the duty is, and sometimes they're right. Maybe it should be this other thing. No one thought of it. Here's a chance to be open to change. But sometimes it's a really good reason why things are the way. And we can reframe that perspective. We can fix a lot of that sense of entitlement.
That's good. What else you got, Jake? You're leading quite a panel.
Well, with that, yeah, very thoughtful and insightful thoughts on this, and just was reiterating again. It's very like I'm constantly learning and adapting. So it's kind of, I think for me, it was kind of middle of the road, and then in my department, it's flipped to where then you became the senior guy, and then going, because I was from a very senior crew where two of the guys then recently retired, and then I moved into a different crew where then I was the guy senior, and then it was a very new guy. So then I think I was handling these type of situations very well, and then just was put into a new unique situation, and then just kind of needed to, like what everyone's saying here, just kind of check yourself. And then this is very good on reflecting back into home base, and then starting back up. So great, very insightful and thoughtful answers. Very appreciative of it.
Oh, that makes me happy. I mean, that makes me happy that you're in that transitional mode, and then you get to brainstorm back it off with I mean, it's just, this is so cool. This is so cool. All right, what you got next for us?
Then with it, I'll go. So in the realm of public safety, EMS, maybe fire related, I mean, we know our backgrounds. If there is constantly a budget and resources limited, but if you did not have budget or resources limitations for the mental health, what would you desire to do for the service in general, cross country, and or your department?
Ooh, that's good. Start with Brian on that one.
So limitless resources. I mean, it's easy for us to, and here's what I honestly think. You could throw a lot of money at these problems, and I'm not sure they would ever go away. Like, we like to shake our fists, and being that I'm a boots on the ground guy, I like to look at that sort of thing. I mean, obviously for Chicago police, we have a phenomenal employee assistance program. I mean, remarkable, but it is catastrophically understaffed for money purposes. So if I had limited resources, I would hand them the keys to the bank, and I would say, you hire the number of clinicians you need. You make sure that there's no waiting list, there's no whatever, that you get the clinician backup and the resources that you absolutely need to get people the help that they need. And they do a phenomenal job. Again, I can't speak highly enough of it. I'm one of our peer support people. That program is awesome as well. And I think that would be the main place I would put money. I would also say, but then again, you need to look at some other things that are out there as well. Hiring. Part of the reason that we have problems on the Chicago Police Department is we're understaffed, and we wind up working weekends. We over the summer, our weekends get canceled constantly. The shifts get moved around, 12-hour days, 18-hour days, et cetera, and so on. And it grinds people down. It burns them up, and it burns their home lives and everything else. So again, could you spend more money on better manpower, hiring more personnel that have boots on the ground that can fill out the missions a little bit better than we do right now? Yes, I think that would be another thing. Being able to spend more money on training and useful training, not repetitive training or checking box training and things along those lines. But I'll be honest with you, my little plug on this thing is, and I say the same thing that I said about training people, when I teach classes all the time, I tell people, mental health begins with us. It begins with the boots on the ground person. I can shake my fist at the superintendent of police all day long, but at the end of the day, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. It's our job as teammates, as people that work together, as comrades, as schoolmates, whatever it is, to start looking out for one another and taking responsibility for our own health and looking out for one another. And I say this all the time, that nobody on my team would ever leave me. If I was wounded on the field of battle and I was in a fire swept position, they would come and get me. No matter what it took, they would come and get me. And if you do that, why would you leave me in the locker room when you know I'm hurting? So again,
I love
the thing
that.
I talk about that all the time. Like, take care of each other. Start at the, look to your left, look to your right. That's the dude, that's the gal that's got your back. And live the creed. Be about that and take care of one another. And then, I can't fix what the superintendent does, but I can fix what we do in the break room, in the gym, in wherever else. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind too, that we like to blame money and resources, and we had higher support expectations. But at the end of the day, that does not absolve us of our responsibility to take care of one another. So yeah, for me, endless money supply, give our employee assistance program all the money they can handle, start getting some more boots on the ground so we can start spreading these missions out a little bit and get some good training in there. And I think that would be a huge thing. It's a lot of things we can't touch that would improve morale that I'm not going to talk about here for another 2 months until I'm retired and I can give you my full spiel. But for now, I think that's where I would go personally.
Well, can I ask you to do me a favor and just give them your fist bump story?
So, here's the thing, like I constantly strive to be the happy, friendly guy. Like, I'm always, joking with guys, saying things, whatever. And I fist bump everybody. And I think to a certain degree, people kind of think I'm a little bit weird about it. Like, I got some weird fist bump fetish thing. But at the end of the day, my thought process is you never know when that dude's having a crappy day, and somebody being genuinely happy to see him, saying something nice, doing that physical contact thing. I think that's important. And maybe that's all I do as the medic attached to the team. I'm not action guy. I'm not kicking indoors or whatever else, but my sector of fire is being that guy for them. And I fist bump everybody, and it's kind of spread around now. Like, I see people in the gym that aren't even on the SWAT team, or I see people, whatever. It's kind of my jam. I always try, no matter how much sometimes I'll do it. They'll say something funny and fist bump them and then walk away and be like, oh man, I am just not feeling it today. But I put the game face on. Because that's kind of, you got to have a game face in this line of work. And that's what I try to do. And I think that's my sector of fire. Like, when I was in Iraq, I was older than everybody else, and the guys kind of looked up to me. So again, that peer support roles always come kind of naturally to me. But I think that's important. And that's what my little thing is to, do you want to be like Sergeant Major Plumley and just walk around all angry all day, gruffing people? How do you know what kind of day it is? Like, that's fine if you're that guy and you jumped into Normandy and 3 other places and whatever, but I'm not that guy. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the angry, salty old timer. So I make a point out of doing that sort of thing. And I really think people are starting to understand it more. But I think for a while there, people were like, is this guy got a problem or something? But, I still do it anyway.
Oh my God.
Awesome.
I think Brian took all my good ideas, so I'll just use some other ideas. Unlimited money and resources, EAP and such is critical, and a lot of agencies are doing so much better, but there's still kind of that friction point of who's going to make that call. And I think Brian's main key is, I'm sorry, gang, you were on that multi-pediatric code or that homicide. We got calls holding stacked up. You need to get out there and we'll talk about it later. Or, oh, we'll, later. And having that unit utilization time, when you're hitting numbers 70-80% of your work shift is physically on a call. When do you have those quiet moments? And
Right.
I found a lot of times it's stumbling on those quiet moments, like you said, where someone says, how do you feel about that thing? Or how do you, and then not being afraid to say how I feel, like, yeah, it
Yep.
deeply affected me, or this is how I process it. I know some agencies, they will have LCSWs in uniform as part of that division or that shift or that, and they're just always there and present. Even simple things. The Virginia Beach has therapy dogs, and just having them come by just
Yep.
breaks the crustiest, angriest, whatever.
Yep.
We'll
Yep.
see the fluffy dog, and but it breaks into those incidental conversations, and have the ability and time in your work day to be able to sit still and have those discussions, I think is critical for mental health.
Jacob, will you tell them the story about when you pulled off the way that you've started that peer support group where you pull off someone, if you don't
Yeah.
mind?
So I'll get into that. Yes. So yes, that came up. Great minds think alike. Yeah, in my notes as you guys were talking. So I'll get to that point, and then, but with that, then with like why I brought this question up is that about a year and a half ago, or just a little over a year ago in 2024, our department had 2 suicides, and by very senior guys. And then with it, then I mean, obviously you're always dealing with mental health and peer support, but then there's been some people in my take of it is just their own angst. They're like, I wish the chief would do more. I wish the chief would do more. Okay. But then my question would be, so that's why I presented it that way, is that I feel that we're doing a lot of great things, but then I presented it like if you had unlimited resources or budget, well, what would you do? What do you want the chief to do? And then the answer, I liked it because basically I think that we have a lot of things, which I'll get to, that we have in place, but it's like anything at the tactical level, we got to implement those things. And our chief is, and when you hear these things, then they're very progressive and can potentially be costly, but then the chief is doing the right thing. So with it, then kind of from speaking to the money thing, where when we initially started setting up and looking to set up our peer support or mental health, we started looking at everything across the board. And when I was doing research and part of that group to set it up, it started looking at FDNY. And then right after 9/11, they had unlimited resources and unlimited money, and they threw it at it. And one of the things that they did was put a licensed clinical social worker in every firehouse, and that went over like a turd in a punch bowl.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
with that, so that was spot on with the money. It's not always about the money. But the big thing that they did learn was that peer support and exactly what Brian was saying, checking on your brother or sister to the left and the right, and getting to know them on the good times, what their baseline is, and then when they're off par, asking the hard questions, checking on them, and calling them on the days off, or like what he said,
Yeah.
you're not going to leave them in the locker room after that screwed up call. And then and then also through that, and then being part of the military, the one thing that doing that research that they found too is that maybe there's not been enough studies, but it seemed like the generation from World War II handled this a little bit better. And one of the aspects of what they found was that, especially compared to Vietnam, when they left the combat zone or the area, the AOR, Vietnam, they got on a plane and they were back home instantly. World War II, almost all of them had to spend at least 2 weeks on a ship together, doing that peer support, talking to each other, helping each other in the
Yeah.
like-mindedness. And so some of that is just doing that with our brothers and sisters now with that. And then so at kind of what we do and that what we developed into on some of the critical calls here at Lee Summit, we'll immediately activate our peer support team. And pull that service or pull the unit or members out of service and do a group peer support instantly. And then that will kind of talk through it. And then I've used the methodology from the Army with their after action report review. And then it's not, we use that methodology, but we're not critiquing the call in your skills or anything. But what I found is we'll talk through the call or the events chronologically. But then it's always prefaced, and then even as we're going, this isn't judging, did you do the right thing, not, or you could have done this better. We would just kind of talk through it. And once people start talking chronologically through it, invariably everyone that I've been part of, people eventually start sharing their feelings, their thoughts, and going through it. And it's been very helpful. So with our chief, he's allowing us to take those members out of service for those group peers. So that is awesome. And then we also have an algorithm with, if a member is not quite feeling right, there's different aspects of it. Is they're feeling good in that group therapy, then we can just go back to service. But then it started kind of with myself, and he's the deputy chief now, was at that time was a battalion chief, is that in my situation, I was working as, the first part of it was as a level 1 trauma nurse on my day off, was doing a shift there. And then a GSW came in, 18-year-old, or no, it wasn't quite 18, but a teenager that was at a park, and he truly was minding the nose business, own business, and got shot, ended up going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life from the waist down. And he was truly minding his own business. And so then I'm just distraught. So my wife, going through this after coming home and dealing with my own things, I'm more forthright of sharing some of these type of things with my wife. And so we went to dinner, tried to calm down and, with that, and help me through it. And then the next morning I started my fire shift. And then basically we started at 8 and we got a GSW about 7:45, which was a suicide at one of the local high schools. And so went through, then had to deal with that. That was very traumatic, especially happening in one of the restrooms at the high school. And so then when I came back, I was the primary paramedic for that day, and I was like, I'm shot. But then with it, then one of the options, what we did was then we just put me as the firefighter riding backwards on the truck, where then I was still around my brothers and sisters and they could watch after me, but then I wasn't in one of those primary roles of having to be the attending paramedic and the active. And so that was very helpful. So then from that, we developed the kind of that algorithm where either if they're good to go, you can just sit down and have that talk and move forward, or you can put them in a different position. Then thirdly is if they truly need to be out of service, they can stay at the firehouse and be around their brothers and sisters, but not have to go run calls at all. And then the last one would be they could go home. But if they go home, we definitely check are they going to be going home with somebody? Is there going to be a spouse or someone there? Are they prone, to a lot of alcohol? Do they have firearm? What is the situation? Make sure that they're going home under a healthy situation if we do allow them to go home. So having those aspects of it is for us I feel when going to, seminars, conferences, and having these discussions is very progressive. And then when you look at it, the expense that could cause, because, you're calling in overtime or something to that effect if that goes down. So it was very proud of our chief in allowing us to do that. And then with that, not only do we check on our members then, but then we have a follow-up over the next 24, 48 hours a week after these critical events and making sure that everybody's doing well from those events.
Okay, so I have a question about that from a layperson. So when you say we, and you say my chief, I was glad my chief let me do it. I mean, that was a decision that could be made just at a house level with your chief. And then,
so now in our organization, when I say chief, I was actually talking to the chief of the department. And explaining ours, we've got 3 shifts. We have about 40 people on per shift, and we got about 200 personnel overall.
Okay.
And then also, then those decisions can be activated by the peer support team through the company captains and then the ops chiefs of that day. But then the support is from the top down. So far we've had no issues with any of our supervisors if we need to do any of that action through there.
That's
but
awesome.
Then what it comes down to is it's that whole that we could we've moved the needle to the right, but it can easily go backwards where, because we're men, prideful, the ego thing, where in mine, and then as that we continue this peer support, when certain type of these calls comes out, some of our members will be like, hey, let's just call them, see if they need anything. I'm like, no, we're going to call and check on them. But then if it's a certain level call, we're going to provide and be intrusive to a point, not over intrusive, but intrusive to a point, because every time you call, everybody's going to be like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm good. And then we'll just revert back to the way it used to be.
Yeah.
So you have to find, that's a fine line that you have to do, in each situation is unique because of what's too intrusive and what's not intrusive enough to make sure that we're dealing with the situation at hand.
That's
So
powerful.
I'd say the one thing we didn't cover, all of us, and I think this is important. I think we kind of around the outside of it. I think one of the other big things is, it doesn't sound like, Jake, you got a problem with that, is that, remove the stigma. Like, I think a lot of the time that I think in all these fields, you have the warrior mindset, especially bad in the law enforcement world, where you're trained to go out, grab a radio in a car and go out there and trust nobody and, whatever. And I think it's less now, but for a long time, you'd be viewed as a weak sister if you said you needed help or you whatever. And again, this is a ground. I mean, your chief can come down and say, you're not going to do that all you want to. And that's not going to stop the barn boss or the senior TL on the team from being like, that's BS. I think a huge thing for us to predicate for this whole thing to work is lose that idea, lose that shame. Like, listen, man, sometimes people need a couple of days off. They need a break. They need whatever else. They need to get some help. There's no shame in that. I think the better we do that, the better off. And your comment about keeping people at the station, I mean, the military learned that in World War II. You keep your combat casualties, your psychological casualties, as close to the front as you can. Let them get well and then move them forward back into their units again. The further you separate them, sometimes the worse it is for them. They'll do better. And then the final thing I always tell bosses is that, well, this is super expensive. I'm like, if you think this is expensive, watch what happens when you don't. How much is a department funeral? How much is it going to cost to replace this guy? How much, tactical medicine? Oh, you don't want to pay for tactical medicine? Okay. First lawsuit that comes down the pike because we shoot somebody that we then can't appropriately treat. You just paid for your tactical medical program for the next 100 years. So again, if you think this policy is expensive, wait till you see how much ignorance cost you. So that's one of the things I tried. It's one of the little additions I wanted to throw in there. But for the main one, I think it's just the boots in the ground level. Man, lose the stigma. Lose it. Doesn't make you a weak person. Just means somebody you need a little bit of extra help every now and again. You'd never crap on a guy who pulled an Achilles tendon and spent a couple of weeks out of the gym getting healthy. Why would you do that to a guy that's having some mental issues?
Yeah, no joke.
So I think you're gonna beat it.
I used to sell pharmaceuticals and I sold for hypertension and I sold for mental illness, right? And then I sold for two types of mental illness, psych and neuro. So some of my apathetic doctors who had the most elderly patients that would, treat the shit out of people with the hardest core syndrome X drugs you could possibly think of on the market, and they didn't care, like hypertension, wazoo, combo meds, knock them down 40 points, with one pill, right? They'd be the same ones who'd say, I'm not going to tell them they have Alzheimer's, give me Alzheimer's and give me a gun. And you're like, okay, that's your same patient. We ranked them by decile. We called them decile. That means volume. Like, so you're a decile 1 through 10, and 10 means like you're the highest level internist. You're the ones they trust the most, right? You're an 86-year-old African-American guy who's got diabetes, hypertension, the whole gamut, right? You're losing your toes. And out of the blue you lose your mind, and they're gonna throw like friggin' Kozar at you, and Kozar because it's $3 on Medicaid or whatever, it's not even called Kozar anymore, like whatevs, and give you the ACE inhibitor cough, and they're gonna give you that, your hypertensive emergency, and they're gonna give you that, but yet like then they're going to refer you to a neuro. And I mean, I'm talking, I mean, if I talk to Jacob, then it's like, Jacob's like VA, thank God you probably, hopefully, I mean, come on, y'all all know that. I mean, how long it's going to take to get an appointment there. But I mean, these are elderly patients that can't fight for their own healthcare the way that we can because we've got the knowledge of it. Right. and I've got the same doctor who is treating, and their wives or husbands who are the caregiver. And by the way, they might need an SSRI, you know? I mean, come on. And so, but out of the blue, we don't want to address mental health. We're going to address this. To me, it's asinine. It's because it's measurable to them, right? Because they don't suffer from it, because they're from a generation that said, suck it up and put some dirt on it. You know, that's how y'all were raised. That's how, I was raised, put some dirt on it. Well, it's like, and I've told all three of you, my favorite saying that I've ever heard from one of my physicians was, I can give you a pill or I can give you a plan. I said, plan, please. Right? Plan.
Yeah.
This was a psych. He gets paid to write scripts, right? And he goes, I can give you a pill and I give you a plan. I said, plan, please, but yeah, it's like, what do we treat? The cost of not treating is, I mean, me as a business owner, the cost of a bad hire is a hell of a lot more expensive than the cost of me coaching them. If they're not coachable, I got to wash my hands. Like, if they're not coachable, I got to let it go. But I mean, it all comes with leadership, right? And it starts at the top. If my people fail, it's because I failed. And I take that every day of my life, and it used to be that I took it to bed with me at night to where I couldn't even handle it. But then I just gave it to God and said, you take it from me, because I can't, I can't be such an empath that my mental health doesn't allow me to, and that took a lot of therapy, trauma therapy, and a lot of time with PTSD to deal with that, but anyway, but I'll say, it's just what you said. It's like let's discuss our budgetary options, right? Like I say to my prescribers all the time, you are not a financial planner. And by the way, if you're an EMS or law enforcement or a paramedic or first responder, guess who pays your bills? I'm your boss. So I work my job, my brains out, and I should have the right to choose whether I get a generic or not. I don't need CVS to switch it for me and get some kickback somewhere and then have someone running for office saying that pharmaceutical companies suck. They at least do research and development. So anyway, there's my side story on that. But why are you laughing, Jake? Anyway, next question. There's my soapbox. I'm getting off it.
Yep, all good stuff. Yeah, but then just kind of to wrap that up, that any amount of money, whatever it comes down to individuals, I think it goes back to the like holding the standard. So the common theme is that look yourself in the mirror and that we can help make a difference at our level with standards and with mental health. So, and that would be the preach. Then one final thing that then the way I would describe it to our guys is that we're a family. So then at your individual company, trying to create that environment where they can come in and be very vulnerable after calls. And then the way I would say it is then the other companies, you're still family, but they're more of like cousins or aunt and uncles. So yes, they're family, you're going to be close with them, but there's certain things that you wouldn't share to them and you may not be quite as vulnerable with them. But that with those intimate people that you run calls with daily, is that you need to create that environment where you can be completely vulnerable and open up and share those thoughts and stuff.
Yeah. You put a question into the feed, or not the feed, but in our prep questions, and I actually wrote him back, you guys, and I texted him and said, "You're so Navy," because because they plan, all of you guys do, but I said you were so Navy because he had that awesome list of questions ahead of time that I thought were great. But my favorite question, because we're getting close to the end, and I think that there's a contest that's about to go on. So my
Well, and
favorite,
then I was this is great because I was wanting to. We did some heavy talking. It was like, let's get into the best question. Yeah, what is the best prank or joke that you've either seen, heard of, or implemented yourself? So go ahead.
Or received.
Yeah.
So David, you start.
As I was telling you guys when I was in the fire department, one of the firefighters, his side job was a clown. And so already that, and I like, this is not the guy I want to get, after me. And he owned a practical jokes store as
Oh,
part
wow.
of it. Yeah, so this is not a man to be trifled with. And it's my understanding they actually started having to make policy of like, you cannot interfere with gear, turnout
Yep.
gear, can't interfere with doors or ambulance egress. I mean, he was putting ping pong balls into people's lockers. Like, no one even knows how he did some of these things. So that was legendary. I'm not one for pranks and such, but I was told if they're not making pranks on you, that's when you worry.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
like, yeah, so now it's like the taunt, right? It's mutually assured destruction. That's the only way you're gonna. And one of the rookie things was, oh, you got to make the coffee. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, and I explained, I don't know
What?
good or bad. I know that's a whole other, but I'm not joining the coffee generation. But okay, you want the rookie to make the coffee. And it occurred to me, if you leave Diet Pepsi out overnight where it gets nice and flat, that looks exactly the same as black coffee. So that's the best prank I could pull on. And someone else tried to get one of those little Hallmark cards where the music will play Happy Birthday. They slid it under my bunk with some thread. So at night, they pulled the little thread so it would be playing Happy Birthday somewhere in the room, and you had to go find it at night. Well, I took that device, put it in their truck. So while they're driving home and they pull the seatbelt on, now it's playing Happy Birthday somewhere in their truck while they're driving home. So that's my prank stories.
Those are three good ones. Those are three good ones. Okay, what about you, Brian? Oh, wait. Brian says he has the best. I'm waiting for you.
Okay. So mine kind of are similar to David. I mean, there's several, but then the ones that are allowed to be talked about on this platform. So currently, though, I mean, there's basic ones. We have one guy that is very good about it. He just calmly will be, because we have some of our stations are fairly large, so he'll just calmly be walking around, but always is hiding and scares the crap out of you at any given moment. And then definitely I did because you can buy off of TikTok Shop or any of those, the crickets sounds or whatever, and so hid them in the rooms. And then, which was great, it got onto me. So on one of the military exercises on the female officers, they put, and you could get the travel alarm clocks that you used to be able to buy like in the 90s more prevalently.
Yeah.
And they hid it in the bottom of my sea bag. So it went off like at 2 a.m. But it was very faint enough that it's like, okay, I'll just try sleeping through it. But you couldn't. And it was just loud enough that baby, like the two racks near it could hear it. And it was just frustrating. And so I tried to get one of those recently, but they don't even, I didn't do a ton of research, but you couldn't really find those anymore. And so the ones I could, they just go off, but then they go off for a minute. And so then I hid one of those, or I got two of those, hid them underneath the beds. And they probably lasted for almost 3 months.
Oh,
Where it would go off at like whatever 2 a.m, and then it'd only go off for a minute, and then because then we have 3 shifts, and they share the bunk room, and they set it to like I was like, oh wow, but it was just enough that it didn't bother them, and so no one looked for them, but I didn't think it would go over quite that well. So those are some of the ones that we've done, but there's been other very high level ones that won't get into.
Yeah, that's like a violation. Okay, I'm gonna go on the search for that because I used to have that alarm clock, and I know what you mean. And I just recently got this watch at the Army Navy store. They're doing like all my Splints and Whiskey gear. They're killer. It's in Portsmouth. You all know Portsmouth, well, except for I don't think Brian's been. Brian, you got to come visit, man. We got to come visit.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Don't worry, I will. So anyway, yeah, we'll have like a reunion. But anyway, so I get this at the Army Navy store, and the dude pranked me, and he preset it, and so he didn't realize that I sell to Lebanon, Poland, and all the other world. So it's like I'm already up, right? But this bitch goes off at like 3:55 every morning, and he made it so that there's 3 ways that I have to turn it off,
Oh
right?
wow.
Yeah, and I'm like every morning, I'm like beep beep, beep, like, and I'm trying to figure it out. It's it's habitual. And so it's so funny. And so I finally called him. I'm like, I've invested in all these shirts, these hats, this, that. I freaking worship you, dude. And he knew exactly what it was. He's peeing in his pants. You know, like I'm not in a firehouse, but he was like, "You're my battle buddy, and you're going down." I'm like, "Well, joke's on you, dog. Like I wake up at 3, but joke's on you." But it was so funny. Okay, Brian, close us out with your because those two were good, and there were two.
I'm
They
a
each had a
little
couple.
reticent to tell you this one because it's so good. I hate to put it out there, but I'm going to anyway. So the first one we
Yes.
did was way lamer, but Stone Park was an older fire station. And I don't know if you know this or not, but you can unscrew shower heads and put bouillon cubes in there.
Ooh, yeah.
No.
If you want the next shift to smell like beef stew, yeah. So that started quite a little war. So you can do that, but that's nowhere near the coolest one. So this is a complicated one that we kind of planned a little bit, and some of it was spontaneous. We had just had that day, we had a extrication drill with cars and stuff like that. And we had a guy, and he was one of the smartest medics I've ever met in my life. He since went to medical school, super smart dude, but a super nice guy as well. But a little bit, maybe not the most common sense kind of guy. So he had a brand new car. And what we did was the morning we were getting off shift, somebody kept him busy. We got his keys out of his car. We went down to it. We rolled all his windows down. We took all his stuff out of the car, and then we threw broken glass from the extrication drill in his car. And then we snuck the keys back upstairs again. So he whatever, comes downstairs, and then we're like sitting up there drinking coffee, waiting because we know what's going to happen. He's like, "Oh, somebody broke into my car. The windows are smashed." Ah! And we're like, whoa. We're like, calm down. We called the police department for this. We called over there. We're like, hey, with him standing right there, hey, somebody broke into one of my guys. I'm his shift lieutenant. Hey, somebody broke into one of my guys' cars. Can you come over here and do a report? They're like, yeah, roger that. You know, Fire Brothers, we got you. And they come over and we keep them busy. Like the guy comes in, the cop comes in the building, goes upstairs and starts doing the report and whatever else with him. And he calls the dispatcher. The dispatcher's in on, hey, I need a number for a motor vehicle, whatever, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, we sneak back downstairs, empty all the stuff, all the broken glass out of his car, roll his windows up, put all his stuff back in there again. And the cop's like, okay, we'll go down. We're going to take some pictures real quick. And then we're going to go ahead and, whatever. We go back. So they go downstairs and the car's perfect. Awesome. But the cop was like, oh, you SOB, you think it's funny, the prank. Oh, so I called that in. Like, this is a legit, because that's it, man. I'm arresting you. And it goes, whoa. And of course, I'm playing the part like, oh, don't arrest my guy. And he's like, no, screw that guy. So he handcuffs him and they're putting him in the back of the car. We take a picture of him getting in the back of the car. And I'm like, all right. They pull him out, they handcuff him. And this guy's like, what the hell just happened? And we sat down and explained the whole thing to him. But it was a lot of moving parts, but it was absolutely classic. The look on his face when he came downstairs and saw his car in perfect condition. And he had no idea what happened. Now the cop was perfect. He played into it. He was like, literally, it was the perfect storm of practical jokes. I've never heard a better one than that in my life.
That one's good.
No, my face hurt. That was like you.
That takes a lot of coordination. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
we were bored. We didn't run a lot of calls in Stone Park, so Devil's was it Empty Hands of the Devil's Workshop? Yeah, for us big time. Yeah, didn't see a lot of tomfoolery like that on Ambulance 10. Nobody had the energy for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God,
that's awesome. Yeah, but the Bouillon one, I think I'm gonna have to take that one up.
I want to
Please
try that
do.
at
All
my
yours.
house.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that Andy, my husband, watches the podcast as much as he should. So I think I'm going to
Don't
try
learn
it at
'em.
my house. Yeah. And I'm going to do it on his day off, but he's in love with going to the dentist and he has to go tomorrow. He thinks the dentist is the greatest thing. So let's keep it all hush hush because he's not going to watch this. Yeah, thank you, David. Keep it on the DL.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
right. And I'm gonna bouillon that. I've got it right over there. I'm cooking the best food right now, and I've got my bouillon ready. So tell
You're
me, under
welcome.
the shower head,
And then put
and
a
then
cube in there and
So stay tuned, audience, for next week's episode of Splints
Yeah.
and Whiskey, where you too will find out the marital status
where
of
Liz is like
Andy.
this. I'll be like, "Hi guys,
The bouillon didn't work, guys.
hey guys, my name's Liz Single. Like I just did that." But I mean, he really does. He likes chicken and beef, and I've got both.
Well, he's gonna smell
cubes.
like beef stew for about a week after that. So
I'm going for it. I am
This is awesome,
totally
yeah.
going for it. Okay, I love this. All right, Jacob, David, Brian, thank you so much. This has been such a fruitful conversation. It's been killer. I know our listeners are dying. I'm dying, not just from the hilariousness. And stay tuned for the commercials of my husband when he comes out of the shower brown. But no, we had some really good stuff today. Jakes, thanks for moderating and for coming up with the questions. And you guys stick with me for a second. I'm just gonna thank the listeners. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us again for Splints and Whiskey. You have made this podcast global. You've made it awesome, and it is for you. So if you have any questions to any of these guys, they are medical professionals. They are tenured. They're extremely awesome, and as you can tell, they're willing to collaborate. I mean, they just met an hour and a half ago, and here they are, and we're all battle buddies. We're all battle buddies, and that's the most important thing, right? We look out for one another. So thanks, you guys, again. Look forward to having you listen to us on the next episode of Splints and Whiskey. We're going to bring either another great panel, or you're going to see my arrest record of the things that with the bouillon cube. So
Yeah.
one of the two things. Yeah. So I might need bail money. And if so, we'll just need a new sponsor. But besides that, thank you guys. Have an awesome day. Y'all stick with me, panel. And again, you guys be blessed. Have an awesome day. And thank you for your service. See you next week.